Whenever you think of Pakistan International Airlines, you usually think of corruption, bribing, and perhaps even sometimes curry. But the national carrier has been in the news for many reasons, sometimes good and sometimes bad, but this airline has had a turbulent past. Now, the airline dates back to before Pakistan became an independent country in 1946, when Muslim businessmen from British India established an airline called Orient Airways. Now, when Pakistan became an independent country in 1947, Orient Airways performed relief operations between India and Pakistan using only 2 DC-3s and 15 employees. After moving its base to Pakistan from India, the company began serving domestic routes to Calcutta in India. Now, by 1949, the Orient fleet had grown to 13 planes. This airline, however, was suffering a huge loss, and in 1995, it was merged into a new government-run airline called PIA. After the merger, 4 Lockheed 1094 Constellations were acquired, and the first route outside of India was started by linking Karachi to London via Cairo and Rome. Now, in March 1960, PIA became the second airline to introduce the Boeing 707 after it was leased from Pan Am, only losing first place to Air India by the margin of 1 month. A route to New York via London was started in 1969, and a large fleet expansion project was started in 1962. Now, the 1960s also saw PIA become the first non-communist airline to operate flights to China, and the induction of their first narrow-body jetliner, the Hawker Siddeley Trident. Now, in the 1970s, PIA saw large expansion in its route network by adding more transatlantic routes, and more routes to the Middle East and Europe. The 707s were replaced by the DC-10s in 1973, and cargo services were introduced, and in the late 70s, PIA introduced the Queen of the Skies into its fleet. These aircraft became an iconic symbol of the airline for many years to come, and in the 1980s, the airline introduced its first Airbus aircraft and the 737s, and they also helped with the establishment of Emirates Airline. They provided an A300, a 737, providing pilots and giving them operational assistance. Now, by the 1990s, there were hard times for the airline, which had faced stiff competition on major routes, but they managed to get through it by starting new routes to Central Asia and beginning air services over the Karakoram mountain range. In February of 2000, PIA became the launch customer of the 777-200LR. These aircraft were used to launch their longest non-stop route from Karachi to Toronto. In the same year, ATR-42s began serving the northern routes after a disaster made the aging Fokker F-27s appear unsafe. During the most of 2007, however, some of all PIA's fleet were barred from flying to Europe after the EU Air Safety Commission declared the planes were unsafe, but that ban was lifted before the end of the year. Fast forward to 2017, they introduced a new livery with the national animal, the macaque, being depicted on the tail of the aircraft. Now, every time PIA's future is debated and privatization is discussed, there's no practical involvement of the government or the management on how to move forward. Once the proper steps are taken and corruption is rooted out, the organization will slowly begin functioning properly once again. But if things keep going as they are, there is very little hope for the airline. You see, the problem with PIA is political, not economical. The losses that the airline is facing is due to corruption rather than due to the market competition. Once transparency and a solid business model has been drafted, only then will the airline become the pride of the nation as it once was.